With so many 2D music projects being announced every year, it is perfectly okay for you and me to not be on top of everything that is out there. However, some projects were once pretty big or had a solid following that ended up fading away, and their creators refused to let those projects die in front of them, turning to their fans for one last hurrah. In this episode, let's check the few 2D music projects that got a second chance thanks to crowdfunding. Let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is a new life for 2D music projects, crowdfunding platforms. This is a topic that is barely touched upon in the media in Japan, and even among 2D music fans, it's a topic restricted to when the projects they love end up in a situation that needs crowdfunding. Otherwise, you won't even notice that these projects needed or are in need of crowdfunding to survive. How many times has a favorite project of yours ended or struggled with visibility? As someone fan of many 2D music projects and knowledgeable about a handful of others due to my work at the Hand That Feeds HQ, I've experienced way too many times favorite 2D music projects of mine disappearing, being discontinued, or going on weird hiatuses that are basically a subdued way to end without fans even noticing it. And how many times have you wished you could have done something to make sure those projects you love won't go away any sooner? Or even that you want to revive a project that was cancelled? Crowdfunding appears as a middleman, putting creators and consumers, you and I, the fans, in direct contact with us directly supporting the projects in question. Through crowdfunding, you can revive 2D or mixed media projects even when the music labels that were supporting them no longer do so. This is something relatively new in the music and SEIYUU industries, as up until recently, when a project ended, it was for good. There are a couple of success stories and only one unsuccessful story to talk about. So let's cover these projects that got a second chance, thanks to you, and of course that one that got a little greedy and ended up not being funded. But first things first. What is crowdfunding? Simply put, crowdfunding is a way to raise money from a large number of people to a specific project or cause. Anyone can contribute with the amount they wish. There are at least 5 different types of crowdfunding. However, the most common for 2D or mixed media projects are donation-based crowdfunding, which is basically when fans support projects through platforms such as Makwake or Fanbox, and reward-based crowdfunding, when fans join a platform on which they get rewards linked to the amount they pledge to support the project. A good example of that are those projects using Fanbox as a way to get a consistent source of revenue. Now that we know the basics, let's check the projects that got a second chance thanks to crowdfunding and one that didn't and why it didn't. Dynamic Chord. Once one of the most promising mixed media projects, Dynamic Chord ended up becoming a shell of itself after a series of unfortunate events, starting from a bad anime adaptation even down to a poor smartphone game. None of those captured the original sound and feel of the Dynamic Chord games, and as a result, instead of getting good publicity, the Dynamic Chord franchise was the talk in town for all the wrong reasons, alienating even some of their longtime fans. Let's not sugarcoat this. Dynamic Chord hit rock bottom following those 2 failed projects that were more about trying to make money rather than respecting the source material or even fan service. And it was frustrating from a fan standpoint to watch that happening to a franchise that had so much quality and potential. Yet when everyone stopped hearing about Dynamic Chord, it seemed like it had had its last breath. Its creators, Honeybee Black, tried to bring it back or at least keep it alive. And thus, the Dynamic Chord franchise launched a crowdfunding campaign to greenlit at least another CD in the series by all 4 rock bands. What happened was something very few people believed would happen. Fans not only covered for that initial goal, completely financing that CD series, but also went way over the mark, making the crowdfunding campaign an unexpected success for the franchise. The surplus money earned in this campaign was enough to bring all bands, the original character designs, and its voice cast back. And it was more than enough to finance at least 2 additional CD collections for the franchise, signaling a new era for Dynamic Chord and its bands. This was really awesome to see unfolding. From the creators betting it all on the franchise and it still having some fans willing to help, at least another CD series to sign off in style, to fans' passionate response showing that despite what happened with the game and anime, the franchise was still beloved. Everything that happened was mind-blowing. This was a good example of a project that has a loyal fanbase that is there to help a project lift itself up. And Dynamic Chord's fans did more than that. They helped give the franchise a second chance. Now the franchise is completely owned by Honeybee Black. The music is also distributed by Honeybee Black's own music label. And there are new plans for more CDs and merchandise in the franchise. From being at the top to hitting rock bottom and then being lifted by its fans, the story of Dynamic Chord is quite the impressive roller coaster and, in a way, awe-inspiring. Crowdfunding was the tool used by the creators to try to save the project, and fans responded passionately, making sure it sticks around for quite some time. Out of all stories I bring you in this episode, this is by far the most memorable. Ready Project. Once one of the most exciting and refreshing music projects in the SEIYUU industry, Ready Project, now called Ready, since it was dropped by Sega, it is in that blurred line between being alive and kicking and almost dead. It is no surprise that this project is here, and now you're probably outraged at what I just said. However, think with me for a second. What is Sega best known for aside from the Sonic games series? Bad management of their IP. And Ready Project, much like YuMeirocast, got the short end of the stick, as Sega once again bet it all in an ambitious and thoroughly refreshing SEIYUU-focused project, but ended up throwing it all away as soon as it didn't get any immediate results. And for what? Honestly, no one knows. Sega is just awful at managing its projects and seems like it can't juggle more than one project at a time. The 2D music projects out there have taken a couple of months or even years to become popular. Sega seemed like it was expecting Ready Project to skyrocket in popularity with an exclusively rookie SEIYUU cast. This is crazy. Of course it would take time. Of course it wouldn't become popular in a blink of an eye. But yeah, it's Sega, so we can only be frustrated that such an awesome project, with a refreshing format, would end up scrapped by them. Thankfully, the project is still alive, although less active than it initially was. And that is through not necessarily a crowdfunding campaign, but by a subscription-based model that ends up working like crowdfunding. Much like the hand that feeds HQ and this podcast are powered by several kind patrons on Patreon and Ko-fi, Ready Project is powered by their fans that subscribe to different tiers depending on the bonuses and access to news that they want. They are on Fanbox, now powered by their fans, something that ensures the project continues to hold live shows and release music, however, less frequently. Crowdfunding via a subscription platform enables this project to continue its work with CD releases, live shows, and the sort, now without Sega's support. Stereo Palette. A promising mixed media project with a star-studded cast. That's how you can describe Stereo Palette, a mixed media project developed by DMM Games. The project was announced early in 2017, but due to technical issues, production was halted, only to be, months later, announced that the production had resumed and the project was still alive. So right from the start, the project was experiencing hiccups, which wasn't a good sign. Even with those hiccups, Stereo Palette released music, not on CD though, a smartphone game, which was discontinued in 2019, live performances, which never happened, a radio show, hosted by Toshiki Masuda and Yuto Suzuki, manga, novels, among other things. The project included the idol group Stir Rhythm, which consisted of Toshiki Masuda, Yuto Suzuki, Junya Enoki, Shota Aoi, Keisuke Komoto, Subaru Kimura, Sho Kiriake, Ihara Shin, and Yuki Ono. The project then was in a weird status in 2019, only being picked up a couple of months later when the creators of Stereo Palette took the project to Fanbox, a subscription-based platform much alike Patreon. The Stereo Palette franchise is still alive, with fans being able to access exclusive illustrations and drama readings on Fanbox. The project continues to be as niche as it was back then, but now that niche continues to have a stream of content. Something that would have never happened in case the creators had chosen to simply discontinue the project altogether. I-CHU. In 2015, the 2D music project I-CHU was launched. With music published by Victor Entertainment and a cast of up-and-coming and rising stars, I-CHU was an exciting project. Not only that, but there was a focus on the story, with character development being a key feature. So there was potential there to impress. So how did this project slowly fade away? This is but my observation, so take it with a grain of salt. The reasons may go as complex as pressure from the distributors or creators to meet ridiculous sales numbers or engagement, or simply down to the extreme competitiveness of the 2D music scene that in 2015 experienced a boom of projects that are still around to this day, most of those still as popular if not more than when they were launched. However, I believe that what hindered I-CHU's path was the competition from other 2D music projects that were launched that same year. There were at least 5 different 2D music projects launched in 2015, many of those with idols as their selling point. The differential point or points of each project helped those gain their own audiences, and as time passed, their unique sound and groups, or even the stories, ended up being the reasons why some projects became big and others didn't. I-CHU had a couple of hiccups right at the start, with the music and performances by some groups being quite subpar, even within the franchise itself. Then the rhythm game may not have been the easiest for most people to get into. Not to say it was easy or difficult, but to the eyes of a rhythm game newcomer, it was certainly an adventure. The cast isn't an issue, as now most of the SEIYUU are stars on their own. Some of those grew as singers and got more experience working on 2D music projects. So yes, I believe a couple of hiccups and the competition made things difficult for I-CHU. And thus the franchise launched 2 games, with the second one replacing the one that was pretty much perfect, watering down the rhythm game experience to accommodate fans of 2D groups, however, that don't like or aren't comfortable playing rhythm games. It even got an anime series, which wasn't bad at all, just required prior knowledge of the project to be fully appreciated. So to see this franchise needing to go the crowdfunding route to release all story chapters planned for the second game, thus wrapping up the story, was surprising. Everything pointed out that the project was still pretty much okay, but it wasn't. The I-CHU franchise found crowdfunding an opportunity to complete the game's story after the second game was quickly discontinued. It provided fans with closure, something that not every fan of 2D music can say they have had, especially with projects going silent or suddenly cancelled. And technically, the project is still around, however, with its activity reduced to a bare minimum. Wave. Although not a 2D music project per se, let's talk a bit about Wave, a mixed media project that went from having a ridiculous budget and sponsors to falling on its face without sponsors and having to resort to crowdfunding platforms to survive. Wave is a mixed media project that puts focus on surfing, a sport that was included for the very first time as an Olympic sport at the postponed 2020 Tokyo Olympics, through music releases, anime, radio, apps, events, and other media. This project was created by Love and Art behind B Project and High Superb in partnership with Surf Magazine, NSA Surf, Bay FM 78, and Murasaki Sports. What happened to Wave was weird and unexpected. COVID-19 was a big issue in 2020, and thus the 2020 Tokyo Olympics were postponed to 2021. What this meant was that the anime that was originally hinted to premiere around the time the Olympics were going to take place had to be delayed alongside the Olympics. However, the anime had already been created and money was being wasted by having it just sitting there waiting to premiere. What happened was that the anime series ended up being split into 3 movies. The music releases dropped all on the same day. There were 2 cast events, but with very few people in attendance, and the game was a travesty. A money-grabbing game with plenty of bugs, unfinished content that shouldn't even have left testing, and no voiced characters. Not to mention a gacha rate even worse than most gacha games. So there were plenty of things going on with this project that hindered its chances to shine. But despite all those hiccups, the project lives on. The radio show is still active, and fans can get content updates via the franchise's Fanbox page. The failed experiment. Ekmen Live. While there were some successful experiments, the ones I just talked about, there is one 2D project that completely failed to be crowdfunded. And believe it or not, it wasn't because fans didn't want to help. Yes, early in 2022, Ekmen Live, a 2D mixed media project that had really good rock music and a star-studded cast including Shotaoi, Kisho, Ken, and Kentito, just to name a few, saw in crowdfunding an opportunity to breathe new air into itself. The project was tied to an otome game, something that limited its reach, and with the game's end of distribution, there was something awkward to deal with. There is still music to release, and the project could pivot to an exclusively 2D music one. But how everything ended up turning out was ridiculous, and its doom was the result of greed. The project initially opened a crowdfunding campaign for a special CD series, promising to add all songs released up until then, plus the full versions of songs that had only been premiered a couple of months back. So far, so good. The campaign was close to being fully funded, but all of a sudden, the creators, quite possibly upon seeing the amount of money that fans were willing to give them for the CD collection to be released, decided to close the campaign and launch a new one with more rewards. Well, when people are willing to support you, one thing you shouldn't do is constantly changing goals or even cancel campaigns to open another one more ambitious. Because kindness is rare, and for sure, Ekmen Live felt that as they launched the new crowdfunding campaign and completely failed to have it fully funded. What could be a project still releasing music as of now, it's now a shell of itself without money to pay voice actors and music producers, not to mention that those songs will never see the light of day. unless fans rally up again to help. Greed ended up dooming this project. Maybe it's nostalgia talking when these projects are picked up and taken to crowdfunding platforms. Maybe the projects do have a lot of potential and have a lot to offer. Maybe projects want to make sure there is a proper send-off after being abruptly discontinued. Whatever the reason, crowdfunding appears as an alternative way to have projects running even after all the hiccups and the struggles they've faced. Most of these projects have passionate fans behind them that take center stage to save their beloved projects. Although not ideal to have a 2D music project going through these, it is good that there is a chance to thrive instead of just being one and done. Not even a couple of years ago, 2D or mixed media projects that failed to impress or become popular would be shelved for good, never to be picked up again. Now we're talking about projects that have escaped being shelved and got a second chance due to crowdfunding. It is quite interesting to see how the tables have turned. If you and I stop to think, 2D or mixed media projects are created to cater to us, fans, and its creators craft those projects with hopes of those becoming the next big thing, as well as to make money off of those. So if we are the consumers and they want to earn money, crowdfunding is the best thing for both sides. Fans get their favorite projects to continue their activities, and its creators and SEIYUU cast continue to be paid for their work. I wonder if this new trend had started a couple of years ago, if we could now have a crowdfunded Bandiarose or Yumeiro cast. Then again, those are two really particular situations with legal stuff behind them that makes it so that it's really hard for those projects to be revived through crowdfunding. Now tell me, which 2D or mixed media projects do you believe would be revived if it got a crowdfunding campaign? Let me know in the comments on YouTube, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of SEIYUU Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the hand that feeds HQ's weekly male SEIYUU and music-related content, hit the subscribe button. I'll return next week with another episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Thank you for listening, and see you guys around.